Fritz, thank you so much for joining us. We know broadcasters and bakers are the ones who are up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and so have you. We've only got a few minutes with you, and unfortunately you're not covered in flour. We can't be in your baking space because of serious hygiene precautions during this time, but we want to make the most of our time with you. Now, dry instant yeast flying off the shelves during lockdown and often sold out. What can people do if they want to make bread, but they can't find these little golden packets?
So we obviously promote natural fermentation, sourdough baking. That's a big part of what we do. We believe in the health benefits, and obviously there's massive contribution of flavor as well. I mean, sourdough breads are delicious. So we use a natural starter called the Mother, and these would be available at your local artisan baker. So we provide these little starters at on our online app. This is how it looks like. Would you like me to run you through the process?
Yes, we'd love it, because obviously you're based down in the Cape, and unfortunately the rest of the country cannot get their hands on your beautiful product. So if you can give us some tips until such time that we can get those Skoon Mother starters.
So obviously you can start your own Mother. I mean, you can start your own sourdough culture, and that's fine. I mean, it's basically a combination between water and flour, and capturing the local enzymes to kind of host that environment. And those enzymes will later become active, and once the activity starts showing itself, you're able to use that starter to leaven your dough. So we've got a 10-year-old starter right here. It's a rye starter, and as you can see here at the bottom, you can see some air pockets. So this is nice and ripe. So this is how we provide it. We provide it in a little plastic jar like that, plastic container. Now what you want to do is, if you get your hands on a starter or you've developed one at home by yourself, the way to refresh it is always the biggest question. So what we do is, if you've got a ripe starter like this, Marcel, depending on what your recipe requires, let's say it's 100 grams of sourdough starter. That would be it. So I'll use this now, for instance, for my baking today, which I'll, for the moment, discard. Always using a bit of water so there's no sticky and it doesn't get too messy. I am in my office. So what I would propose then, Marcel, is if you can't get your hands on rye flour, is to make a combination of whole wheat and white bread flour, mixture, 50-50. That's what I've got in front of me here. I would then, the component that I've discarded, if that was 100 grams, I'm going to replace that with equal amounts of flour and water, okay? So now I'm going to use 50 grams of flour. Okay. Two very important components of making a starter or even bread at home is always a digital scale and a thermometer. You'd like to keep that close by. So I've got my 50 grams of flour inside. Going to add 50 grams of water. That's it. Now, Marcel, I'm basically going to turn this into a paste. I'm going to ensure that everything is mixed nice until we've got a very nice and smooth consistency. Almost done. Cool. Grab that water. Okay. So I'm going to clean up my sides. This is now nice and smooth. I'm going to close it to ensure that it's airtight. We've already got the enzymes inside that we want to manifest here, so I'm not going to allow anything else to get in there. So what's useful about a clear container is I can monitor the fermentation. So the process from right now is I'll leave this out for 3 hours at room temperature and then put it into the refrigerator. I will then pull it from the fridge when I need to use it. And I will follow that same process.
Fantastic stuff. I've just learned a thing or two there. Now, yourself and your wife, Chanel, you started off with one bakery. You managed to grow that into 3 other businesses in the Cape. Have you managed to keep any of those open during this period of lockdown?
Yeah, so, Tony, we've been very privileged that bread obviously is an essential food component. So we've been able to operate. We've got a partner within Checkers, so we're still supplying them to a certain extent. Obviously, their footfall has declined quite a bit, so we're experiencing that. Our cafe component is obviously closed down completely. So we were able to activate an app, a mobile app. So we do home deliveries on a daily basis, and that's been going.
Now, obviously, Fritz, you employ a number of people as you've built this business. Many of them come from the more vulnerable and poorer communities as well. This must be very difficult for everybody who's been involved in building your business.
Well, so it's always so tricky, you know, because you've got to look after the entity at the end of the day, because the entity needs to see it through to be able to employ as many people for as long as possible. You know, in times like these, it forces you to have to restructure, etc., and make a few hard decisions. But we've been very privileged to not really have to make any critical decisions right now. So, I mean, keeping our staff employed is a main concern and priority for us. So, you know, we cut where we can, but people is absolutely the last resource.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so what do you make of this bread craze or this baking craze that's taking place at the moment? Have we finally moved past this obsession with avoiding carbs?
Yeah. No, that's crazy, Tony. I mean, obviously, I'm sold on bread. I mean, I love it.
You have to be.
Healthy, delicious bread is just next level, and it runs so deep within so many cultures and so many different nations. So it's a very nostalgic product. And I truly believe if made well with, you know, well-farmed wheat and milled correctly and, you know, with good fermentation, natural fermentation, long, slow fermentation, it's a very, very healthy product. And so I'm loving the craze, but it's almost inevitable. People have time now, and bread requires time. Time equals quality with bread. That's it. So, yeah, it's a good thing. I'm loving it. You know, it also makes people very aware of the process, which makes them fans. You know, I mean, it does nothing to our business except enhance it, because people understand what goes into it, the intricacies, the detail. And so they have so much more appreciation for what we do, which is fantastic.
Well, long may the craze continue. I've started baking bread, but I dare say it hasn't come close to what Fritz, his wife, and their team of bakers are able to create. Because that bread is life-changing, let me tell you. With fresh butter, warm, you will keep coming back. Thank you so much. Fritz Schoen from Schoen Bakery giving us some tips there. Tony, are you going to try it?
All I can say is I'm not going to look at bread in the same manner ever again after this whole thing.